Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Let's talk about Saturn square Uranus. So we are just in the midst of hit number 2. There are 3 of those transits for 2021. The first one was in February. The second one is now, which is the 14th of June, 15th of June for me in the Southern Hemisphere. And the final closing aspect, which will close this cycle, will be in December of this year. So the old story of the clash of the titans, the clash of the two forces that couldn't be more opposed to each other, really, in terms of what they represent. Saturn is always the establishment. It's always consensus reality. It corresponds to the nature and the structure of the conscious construct of reality that we create ourselves, as above, so below. It largely correlates and reflects the consensus reality, which is around about 80% of the population. These cycles that occur have proven over history and over time to lay the foundations of very significant historical events and changes that generally come through. Again, just to repeat, what we are all aware of and have been experiencing and living, whether we are into astrology or not, whether we understand astrology or not, we are experiencing these events. The Pluto-Saturn conjunction that really triggered, I believe, was the main trigger for this incredible, what appears to be destructiveness in the world, started with Pluto-Saturn. And it's interesting that, we had that Pluto-Saturn conjunction, and now we have the Uranus square aspect. So Uranus square Saturn. So Saturn, is in this picture very, very strongly relative to the changes that we are all seeing. And, Saturn rules this reality. It rules the boundaries that we are all subject to relative to the world out there, the structures and norms and rules and regulations and laws, etc., man-made laws. And then, of course, there's the component of our own experience of Saturn within our own sort of boundaries of our own personal life and world and life. Saturn rules the largest organ in the body, which is actually the skin. So that's just how powerful Saturn is, really, in our psyche, right? It literally brings into our sphere of understanding, our psychological understanding and perception of things, the fact that I am in this physical body and this is my arm and my arm ends there, right? That's a Saturn experience. To have an awareness that you are not only this physical body, and you have a spiritual body and a light body and an astral body and an emotional body. That would be the awareness through Chiron, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, the transpersonal energies. See, Uranus is a body that cannot be seen right through a telescope, whereas Saturn we can even see with the naked eye. Saturn, if you think about Saturn and its rings around it, that's literally a metaphor for the boundaries that Saturn creates in our physical reality. The material, mundane, physical reality is Saturn's domain, whether we like it or not. And whether we like it or not is an interesting issue within itself, because we have all contributed to the construct of this reality. Whether we like to agree with that or not, or whether we are aware of that or not, doesn't even really matter. That's what has resulted through every single human being that is here or has been here. We have contributed to the construct of this reality. The clash between Saturn and Uranus is quite powerful and significant because it's coming through a square aspect, right? Square aspects are, without question, one of the most challenging aspects. See, when we're talking about a conjunction, there's unlimited possibilities in terms of how a conjunction aspect can actually manifest relative to the two energies that come together. So, for example, when we had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which every astrologer was aware of, and many other people, think about it. I don't know of one astrologer that was able to predict that we would have what's it called, a C19 outbreak. No one predicted that. What we were able to predict was that there was going to be incredible destruction, reconstruction, resistances, very deeply troubled times with the nature of reality. Huge transformations, huge rebirths, but not without the process and experience of certain forms and structures dying off as well. We all knew that because we understand the symbolism to the planets, right? But this is the point of the conjunction. The possibilities are unlimited. You don't know what a conjunction is going to produce. So here we are now in 2021 experiencing a very similar energy, because what started in 2020 has not come to an end, obviously. And to top it all off, we've got this Saturn-Uranus square, which is just completely amplifying the already existing troubled times we are in. There's an amplification of everything that's happening. The square aspect is, as I said, it's one of the more challenging aspects. And think about it like this. It's basically, if you think about it from the point of view of physical reality, material objects, the square aspect is literally like two material objects trying to occupy the same space at the same time. It's just not possible. So when somebody forces those material objects, just to stay with that analogy, to occupy the same space, there's going to be resistance, there's going to be conflict, and there's going to be, because both energies want that same space and neither want to back off. That's what's happening here. So Saturn doesn't want to back off. Saturn certainly doesn't want to back off. Think about Saturn's mythology, the mythology of Kronos, who swallowed all his children for fear of having any of them or anybody have some sort of power or control over him. He wanted to control everything and everybody. And so it's the mythology and the story to that is so abundantly obvious in the nature of reality today. And the way it gets played out is through the establishment, the consensus reality, which is Saturn, and the rest of the population, which would be who don't operate inside the establishment, you could say. And there are various levels within that spectrum as well. There are some people that would just be, totally rebellious, and feel an impulse and a need and a desire to to advocate and to take action very strongly towards certain matters that they do not agree with at this time. And there are others that would be more quiet about it, that would just have a very an inner sort of stance, an understanding about it, an awareness, and would simply just live their life according to that, whilst being aware of the establishment and everything that's going on, but not needing to be in conflict with it. That's a very advanced soul. That's somebody who's got a lot of awareness, who mostly just doesn't project energies out there. So the Saturn square Uranus is just simply reinforcing and amplifying the existing challenges that we are facing, specifically around this C19 situation. I mean, here in Australia, as I said a little while ago, we just had a 3-week lockdown period. We've been in lockdown in and out of that, since 2020, right? Since this whole thing started. And even when we came out of lockdown, of course, nothing was normal. The reality that we all knew prior to March 2020, I don't think is ever going to resurface. A new paradigm, a new reality is being constructed, but there's enormous resistance to that. And there's a lot of different ways one can analyze that and perceive that. But relative to Saturn Uranus, it's simply the order of establishment versus the it would be the minority, okay, of individuals that are more inclined to live outside of the box, okay. And so, as I was saying, we just went in lockdown here recently. We just had virtually 3 weeks, and it was very interesting to me that I have to kind of be very careful of what I say here. How can I put this? So before we went into lockdown, there was an excessive push towards people being vaccinated, right? Now, I'm not here to tell you or anybody else what they should or should not do regarding this issue. It's your business. It's none of my business. But I'm just merely speaking about my own observations, and I'm relating it to the astrological symbolism of how things show up through the cycles, the planetary cycles. So remember, we had the first hit in February of Saturn square Uranus, and that really kicked off this whole vaccine thing quite strongly. There was extreme uncertainty because no one knew what to believe, what to do. There was incredible information that was totally, it was misinforming people. There was something was said one day and then it was withdrawn the following day. And then it was said that this group of people can do it and this group of people shouldn't do it, pending on age, what age you are, etc. There was a whole bunch of stuff that came forward. I know you guys know this because you're all experiencing it in your own way, depending on where you are. The point is that it seems that when it was obvious here in this country that there were still so many people that were opposed being vaccinated, it was then that I noticed that another lockdown just basically happened like that. And of course, the justification for that was that we had a couple of cases. It was literally a couple when this first broke out within the community. And I'm referring to Melbourne now, not the entire country of Australia, because there's different things happening in different states, as there would be where you live, right, where you come from in the Northern Hemisphere. Anyway, in Melbourne, there was still a lot of resistance around taking this vaccine. So we get hit with this lockdown. The fear gets injected. It's nonstop on the news, the media. um, there's this, there's talk again of, we've got a few cases in the community. In order to prevent further transmission, we're going to enforce, a snap lockdown, and this is a great opportunity now for people to go and get vaccinated, to prevent further transmission, etc., etc., etc. So it worked because a lot of people who would be part of the establishment, the consensus reality, did get scared and did run, and I mean run, to various locations and waited in line for 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 hours in some cases to be vaccinated. So what happened worked, right? Now, and here's the thing. This is, and there's a lot of people would have participated against perhaps more their own intuitive sense about things. But unfortunately, what seems to happen to people in the world is that they are easily swayed by the majority. And I have a family member, which I'm not going to talk about the details and who the family member is, but it's a family member who was swayed by this wave that came through and did actually go and get vaccinated, to my absolute horror. Okay, so I suppose, given I just expressed that, it's probably very clear where I stand with regards to vaccination. Now, again, I don't make judgment on those who do. It's none of my business, right? But when it comes to my family, then that's a different story. That's a very personal matter, and even in that, I cannot. I cannot control what that person does. It's up to each person what they wish to do. But the reason I'm sharing this is because here's Saturn Uranus square, just amplifying things up, right? Intensifying the energy of the nature of the conflict and the difficulties that already exist. So the first square, which happened in February, gave birth, you could say, to a series of events, of things that were going to unfold, which largely had to do with the control over the majority of people, Saturn, the imposed lockdowns, restrictions, masks, vaccines, etc., 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 and the minority of people that have been opposed that and still are, Uranus. And so now we're in the middle of the year, and there's still a percentage of people who are opposed the establishment, the laws and expectations on those levels. And I think it should be, I think it needs to be a person's right to make a decision about their life and what they will partake in. And I don't advocate coercing and manipulating and injecting fear into people to do something that they otherwise wouldn't. And a lot of people are following this and doing this with very, very, very little true insight and understanding, because even the experts in the field, at least from what we are being told, they themselves don't know the trajectory moving forward with the consequences of what's being encouraged, right? So this is one of the biggest things that's coming up, on a collective level, and we're at the middle of that cycle. So there's still this enormous sort of pressure, people are feeling really pressured to participate in something that they don't feel confident in, they don't feel certain in, but they feel coerced and pressured to do so, because the game around that is that, well, if you don't do this, then these are the freedoms that will be taken away from you. So this is how it's being coerced. I mean, I even saw what's his name? I've just forgotten his name. An English fellow who used to be a comedian, but who focuses a lot on world matters, and just Russell Brand. Yeah, Russell Brand. I just saw him talk about. He noticed that in America, and this is not what's it called, a conspiracy theory. This is nothing like that. This is actual fact of what's going on in America. And some of you might be very well aware of this, and some of you may not. I don't know. But the powers in play approached companies that own dating apps, right? Those dating apps that people have on their phone and try to find a mate or a partner or a one-night stand or whatever it may be. They approached them and they said to them, we would like you to endorse on the app that if people are vaccinated, they will actually get more swipes. They used the element of relationships and courtship, as it were, through companies, right, to manipulate people into thinking that if they are vaccinated, that they're likely to basically score a one-night stand more easily. Okay, let's just put it bluntly. That's what it came down to. Now, personally speaking, I've never heard anything more absurd in my life. But to me, at least, that points to the desperation of the coercion that's taking place. Now, again, you may have very different, perceptions and views, and I respect your views and your perceptions. I'm just speaking about my own views and perceptions relative to my observations, okay? And again, I must emphasize, I'm not here to say, if you do this, it's right. If you do this, it's wrong. It's not my place to say that about anybody, okay? I'm just, again, sharing my observations. So, Saturn, in other words, is desperately trying to hang on to control. Okay, that's what this is basically reflecting in the world, which is what Saturn did in mythology. That's what Kronos did through and through. The Uranus component is that component where we want to feel a sense of sovereignty and freedom, and we want to maintain our individuality and have the right to choose. The good thing, as much as it doesn't seem good at the moment, is that a square aspect, which is what's happening with Saturn and Uranus, and we're just in the middle of it, right? So we have one more hit coming in December of 2021. And I think that will lead us closer to seeing the next steps, okay, for 2022. I don't think the issues will be resolved, but I think we will come to a closer place in this timeline and trajectory moving forward with the changes that will come through. Now, while Saturn is trying to maintain control, Uranus is resisting that, okay? And so a square is a very difficult aspect. It's almost impossible to find resolution in a square, okay? So if you have planets squaring each other in your natal chart, this is something that you can take away just for the meaning of certain planets in your own chart. Like I said, it's two material objects trying to occupy the same space at the same time. It's just not possible. So there's going to be resistance, conflict, struggle one pushing on the other, one resisting the other, and that's the nature of the square. And so a lot of the, if we could call it resolution, a lot of the potential resolution that may come through is to find a way to work with both. We can't just completely block one and accommodate the other. It just can't happen because both energies are present and we need to work with both. So that then implies that we need to find a way to work within the imposed limitations and restrictions that we may feel and experience and be subjected to through as much consciousness and awareness as we can with our own ability to make decisions and to research and to look into things, okay, and to not feel pressured and coerced, right? But to be able to make a informed decision, not based out of fear. Okay, I think that's really important for all of us. And if that informed decision for you feels like the path you need to take is to take the path of being vaccinated, for example, then that's up to you. Again, I'm not saying one way is right, one way is wrong. I have my own personal views on what that is, but I don't need to talk about that. It's not important. My personal stuff or views are not really important here. I'm just addressing the astrological symbolism and the absolute amplification of energy and tension that is present at the moment. So again, going back to the square, there's not going to be a winner. Okay, it's not going to be a case of Saturn's going to win over Uranus, Uranus is going to win over Saturn, because you cannot resolve the square. You just have to work within the limitations that arise as best as you possibly can. Now, you can think about this and bring it back down to your own personal life as well, because I've spoken very much for the last 20 minutes around the collective uh, the collective matters, which do speak to each of us personally, but to take it now into just a bit more of a personal field, a Uranus square Saturn aspect transit in our charts does bring up a lot of matters of where are we totally conditioned, Saturn, where have we um, imposed lots of limitations in our life through our beliefs, our perceptions, our thoughts, our feelings, our memories, our experiences, whatever it may be, all those things, versus Uranus squaring Saturn and Uranus coming in and saying, okay, well, where could you, where or how could you become less sort of conditioned in your life so that you can find the ability to live a more authentic life? Most people are not going to answer the call to this knocking, okay? Because most people are consensus reality. And most people will just respond to the pressures of Saturn, conforming. That's what Saturn evokes. That's what it essentially reflects in the world. It's the conformist, conforming to the pressures and the coercions and so forth. So you can look at this transit personally in your own life relative to where it's happening in your birth chart from the level of there are aspects of my life that have been built through Saturn, which are largely conditioned into my psyche, that I have arrived at a time in my life where I need to deconstruct some of those conditioned ways, release, let them go, allow more of the Uranian archetype or impulse to enter my life so that I can find a greater sense of ability to be more authentic in the story of my life, in my lifestyle, in my life choices, to feel a greater sense of freedom within myself. So this is not, I'm not talking about um, fighting with people out there or resisting forces out there and so on and so forth. It's virtually futile. It's not about that, right? There will be many people that will do that on that external level, and again, that's fine. That's a certain portion of people that are reflected through the Uranian archetype and impulse in a very specific way. Like I said earlier, the Uranian archetype and energy has a spectrum of different types of people that would be reflected through that, right? And some of those will just be the straight out rebellious types, and that's okay because we do need that as well in this world. We need those people to behave in those ways. Yeah, I'm a double Aquarius, of course I'm going to say that. But the Saturn square Uranus in your own chart can just be, it can be a very tense time in life for sure. Um, but it can be a time of really productive change. And this applies collectively as well, because the the most beneficial thing around a square aspect is that they hold promise for change to come through. It's just that the change doesn't come through, easily. It's not a walk in the park. It comes through cataclysmic, conflicting, critical crisis type of events, right? It's just the nature of squares, it's just how it is. So that applies to these two planetary bodies wherever they are in our birth chart relative to, their location, what houses a Saturn and Uranus in your birth chart. It is those two houses that will be experiencing this level of tension of wanting to stay with the way you used to do things, wanting to hold on to specific structures of your life, and hearing the call of Uranus calling you to step into what would be a, a level that would make you feel more free, a level of life where you could express more of your own authenticity, but it would be stepping into what Jeffrey Wolf Green calls the unknown. Saturn is the world as you know it and your world as you know it, which provides what I call a false sense of security. So to step outside of that, which is stepping into Uranus, you've got to step into a field that feels like you don't have control over, that looks like you don't know exactly what's down that path. That's why it's called stepping into the unknown. And again, like I said, a lot of people won't do it. Some people will do it in smaller ways, and some people will do it in extreme ways. And there's no right or wrong there. That just depends on the individual, the soul's evolution, and what they are ready to integrate at this point in their lives. So the Saturn square Uranus can be a very disruptive and tension provoking journey. 3 hits in 1 year, so it goes for a whole year. We experience this ourselves personally for a whole year, and the whole world does as well. And even though it's running for a whole year, it is the months where it approaches its exactness, which was in February, the first one, June, right now as we speak, the second one, and December, the last one. It is those times where the energies are just, completely amped up. And so there's likely to be more events taking place during these times, right? And also where you're likely to see the more significant changes be activated or show up. And so a lot of what we can assess right now in our own personal life with Saturn square Uranus is think back to, I guess, what was happening for you back in February in your own life relative to Saturn Uranus themes, old conditioned structure, the way you've always lived, what you're used to being and doing and saying and experiencing and feeling and living, perceiving, versus stepping into something that's totally unknown but totally liberating as well. So what are the areas of life that are highlighted at the moment with where Saturn and Uranus is in your chart? Think about that. The houses that they're in, that's where it's going to show up. So reflect back to February. Think back, step in the present and see what theme is there for you at the moment. Because whatever sort of started in February or was triggered, you'll have there'll be more of an understanding of what that is for you right now. Still not able to see exactly what the end result is going to be, and there's still a lot of uncertainty, but there is more of a clearer picture, and perhaps this would be a time where you can actually take action towards certain things at the moment relative to Saturn Uranus square in your birth chart. And then, at the end of the year, which I'll come back and talk about the last aspect later on, but that's going to be very, very important because it's the closure of this whole entire cycle. And that too is going to speak to collective events where we will be in a very different position in terms of what's been set in with the crisis and the change and where we go to moving forward in terms of 2022. So those are some of the themes to consider and think about for yourself. As we know, I was meant to bring up a chart and I totally forgot. So, okay, let me just get some. There's Uranus and there is Saturn. Okay, so you can see they're both at 13 degrees. So the square is, oh, never mind that. The square is exact at the moment. The energies are just totally palpable. They are really, really speaking very loudly, vibrating through the entire earth very loudly at the moment. The other thing is Mercury goes direct on the 23rd. Is it the 23rd? 23rd of June. That's in about 7-8 days' time. I'll come back and talk about that perhaps if I have time. But when Mercury goes direct, it's interesting because he's going to naturally move forward through the order of the zodiac, right? So he's still retrograde at the moment. He's going to make another square to Neptune, okay, is what I'm trying to get to here. So that's going to be a very interesting theme around about that time as well, which I think is going to produce perhaps some further truth or lies, basically, collectively. And also Mars, is going to come into an opposition to Saturn. And of course, it's going to square Uranus, which I've done a whole video on that, so I don't need to unpack that now. But this is important just to mention in this video as well, because even though we've been talking about Saturn, Uranus, this Mars coming to oppose and square is going to add, a really incredibly dynamic twist to this aspect pattern that we have highlighted 3 times this year. And as I said, I've done a video on that, so just watch that if you want to hear more about those sorts of features. And we are still, in the solar eclipse energy that just occurred, not so long ago, 10th of June. It was only 5 days ago. So the energies of that are still quite heightened, intense, relevant. Solar eclipses, as I've said many times, the energies in terms of what can show up, that can be 3 months, up to 3 months or more post the actual eclipse date. So don't underestimate the power of those solar eclipses, although that particular solar eclipse did hold, incredibly promising levels of manifestation from the point of view of spiritual work. But when it comes to being deceived, coerced, lied to, etc., then, this eclipse has it hands down, because Neptune was squaring the eclipse and Mercury, while Mercury was retrograde. So, we need to kind of be really aware of that. I mean, my family member who went and had the vaccine, that person later said to me that they they really regret it, and they felt incredibly pressured and coerced into making that decision, to the point where they live in a particular area where the government had set up these little hubs literally just outside this person's house. I'm talking literally just outside this person's house, and there were hundreds of people lining up. And so this person, and this was going on for days, like for over a week, every single day he was confronted with this, walking out of their home, seeing this, and they just got swept up in it. This is what I'm talking about, being sort of coerced and pressured. It's just what happens. It's very difficult to stand in the Uranian impulse and vibration, because you will stand outside of everybody else, and you will be ridiculed, judged, shamed, not accepted. It takes balls, if I can just be blunt. It takes balls, okay? It takes courage to step into the Uranian paradigm, because it's the minority. That's just a fact. My mum, who lives in Greece, takes the same stance that I do, which is we don't wish to be vaccinated. And she lives in a particular community where most people will be, or some have been, and most are just incredibly confused about what to do and what not to do. And she's dealing every single day with people around her judging her and shaming her for making the decision to not take that route. But thankfully, she's a particularly strong individual, and won't get swayed by the masses. But, there are many people in those situations, and I guess we just, my message about that, again, is I'm not making judgment on what one should or shouldn't do. It's up to you. But my intention and purpose of raising this would be just to bring an awareness around, making up our own mind with, on an informed basis, rather than on a basis where we have no evidence and no real clinical trials and things of that nature to reveal to us what the long-term prospects will be. So yeah, my preference is to make a decision when I'm really informed on what I'm deciding, especially when it affects the rest of my life and my health, right? So anyway, that's my preference. Okie dokie. I'm going to take off and see you guys really soon. There's a full moon coming up in Capricorn, Full moon in Capricorn. Yeah, that should be interesting. It's going to form a square to Chiron, so there'll be a T-square. I'll talk about that soon and come back with more. Hope you guys enjoyed my Prince video where I demonstrated numerous astrological methods and techniques that I employ when I'm working with a person's chart, whether they are deceased or whether they are living, relative to identifying, events and so forth in a person's life. I have put out a special notice about rectification, and I am, offering a special around that. And I guess I probably need to be a little bit more clear regarding what types of rectifications I would be willing to take on. If you don't have a time of birth, then that's not something that I would be willing to take on. And I'm really sorry that I'm sorry about that, but that's just what I need to do. I've only rectified one chart in my life where there was no time of birth, and that was for my father. And I actually managed to do it. And I'm so proud of that because I know it's the exact time he was born. There was a lot of desire and willingness and passion and motivation to do that because of just how close I am with my dad. And it took a long time to work it out. But myself and my partner at the time, we did it together, and it was an incredible achievement. But it's not an easy task. It's not an easy thing to do. Some astrologers may be, willing to take that on, and each to their own. But relative to what I'm prepared to take on at the moment, that wouldn't be something I would take on. So if you have a birth certificate time, a mother's memory, it could even be a memory where your mother says it's between 5 and 7 a.m. I can take that on. I need something to work with. I can't take on no time at all. So just to be clear, to prevent people from emailing me and asking me to rectify a chart when they've got no time. I just not able to do that at the moment. So yeah. Okay, see you soon, guys. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.